I am super excited to have a conversation with her about teams, and we'll dive into that very, very shortly. I just want to welcome everybody that is live. For those of you who are watching this afterwards, welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the Business Book Club. Just to share quickly with you, for those of you who don't know who and what we are about, the Business Book Club's purpose is to share knowledge. We truly believe that knowledge is power. You can only act and behave up until the level of your thinking, and your thinking is determined by the level of knowledge that you have access to. So with the Business Book Club, we like to share knowledge, and hence why we've invited esteemed authors like Heléne to join us on this platform so that we can obtain knowledge that we will be sharing with you, our audience. But not only that, we also accept book donations. And through these book donations, we then donate them to libraries and less privileged community where the access to knowledge isn't as freely and as comfortable, accessible to those of us who are more privileged. So up to date, the Business Book Club has been very privileged to receive more than 8,000 books from our members, which we have donated to schools. So out there are books in the hands of people who never would have had the privilege to have access to books. Thank you to your donations. So if you have somebody that is moving house, somebody that is downscaling, have got a big library, and there are some extra books that need a home, please think of the Business Book Club. We'll gladly accept your donations. And those donations we will then distribute to libraries in less privileged communities so that we can have an equal opportunity to access knowledge. Because once we can think differently, we can act differently. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our author, Heléne Smuts. Heléne Smuts has written a very, very interesting book with the title Ditch Mediocrity. And this is not a normal book. And Heléne asked me earlier today, what did I think of it? And I said to her, Heléne, I think the book is extremely well set out. It is very, very powerful and well written, and also funny and interesting, with few anecdotes, stories, tools, and that's what it's about. It's really about making things practical. So if you're a team leader, if you belong in a team, this book, this conversation is for you. So without further ado, Heléne Smuts, welcome to the Business Book Club. Welcome to this evening.
Thank you very much, Jacques. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Heléne, please share with our members, where does Heléne come from? Just give a little bit about your background. We know that you studied HR, but how did you come to study HR? Was that the thing that you really wanted to do? And how did your journey unfold from there?
So I started with not knowing what it is that I want to study. Like every 17-year-old girl, had no idea. And eventually I went into tourism management. So my first degree is a degree in BCom tourism management. And part of my tourism management degree, I had industrial psychology as one of my majors. And I really absolutely loved the topic. And it's also a topic that my dad back then used to take a big interest in. And we will always chat about industrial psychology and the subjects and those things. And then when I finished my tourism degree, I was like, I was working at a tourism company and a tour operating company, a brilliant one called Go to Africa at the time. And I was just like, I need to go into industrial psych. So I then did my BCom industrial psych degree. And then I moved over into doing my honors in industrial psychology. And then after industrial psychology, I was like, okay, now I need to go into coaching. And then from coaching into personality profiling and then into transactional analysis. So it's kind of, I say I'm not an academic. I love practical stuff. But in order to get there, it was quite a bit of a journey from tourism all the way to psychology.
And then you are being very modest there because you've also cum lauded your psychology degree. So there must be some enjoyment of the academics.
Yes, I did. I actually cum laude all 3 degrees, if I can brag a little bit.
No,
I didn't
absolutely.
have
I
friends, I
mean,
promise. I didn't have friends.
well done, Heléne. But I think that forms a very strong basis for your book. So your book, Ditch Mediocrity, mediocrity. Is, although it has got a lot of practical information, practical tools, stuff that it makes it relevant, it is based on good science. It is based on good academic research that Heléne has obviously studied. So Heléne, we can always say you like the link between the academic world and practical world.
I'm going to take that. Yes, I'll take that. I think that's Jacques, that's a big thing for me. And also with the work that we do with all our clients and the team developments that we do is when we go into a client and we do team developments or leadership development, it has to be practical. People need to be able to sit in that workshop and when they walk out of it, practically implement it and make sure, and it also needs to be easy to understand. Otherwise, people get lost in the actual theory, which is important, don't get me wrong. But there's no point in just knowing what the theory says and not knowing what to do with it. So hence why I wanted to, you speak about sharing knowledge and access knowledge. And I think that's what I wanted to achieve with this, is to share the knowledge and that people have accessibility to the practical application of it.
So Heléne, share with us a story or an anecdote of that, where that realization or that learning became imperative for you, where you said, like, you know what, I need to get more practical with people, or situations only work when they are practical.
Yeah, sure. So I went through quite a few scenarios where I realized that. I remember, I think it was 2009, I did a whole annual process in terms of transactional analysis, where I did a deep dive training and certification in transactional analysis. It's a theory by Eric Berne. I speak about it a lot in the book. And during that whole process, every single thing that we learned and every tool that we learned that was part of TA, in short, we had to physically go through and experience. And that is when I realized just to know what these tools are means nothing. But that experience that you get when you go through that point of what do I look like when I'm a parent, an adult, a child, which is chapter 3 in the book, I think, where I speak about ego states. And what is it, the feedback that I get from people when they say, this is how you show up, and this is the words that you use, and this is what your face does. That is way more useful than just understanding the theory and say, there was this ego state thing that I once read about. So that whole year for me was literally just a practical overload of experiences. And then I think I speak about the story in the book as well. My ultimate favorite story is where it was a bunch of sales guys that I had to do a training for. And I did the whole thing on motivation. And I did another tool on motivation, which is not in the book, maybe 2.0. But
good to hear.
In that process of motivation, which is where I speak about what I speak about in the book, I did a specific activity. And the MD of that company was part of the training. And he sat back. He looked at me after we've done the activity with one person who's experienced it, because I went through the different ways of doing motivation. And he just sat back and he actually swore, I won't do it right now, but he was like, I cannot believe that I have done my performance check-ins completely wrong. And he said, you have just changed the way that I do performance check-ins with my people. And 2 years later, he's now a co-CEO in the whole American region of that same company. And he emailed me the other day just to say, thank you for being a part of my journey, which feels so damn good, because that is kind of a tool that is very theoretical, that we did in a very practical manner in the workshop. And this whole team just flew. And I'm not saying it's all me, but it's certainly that practicality and that implementation of the leaders who then took that and made it part of their business is where the return of investment is lying, if I can call it that.
Yeah. So, Heléne, help me, or out of your experience in working with a lot of teams over the years across different continents, what is the theme in terms of the most common issues that teams sit with or that teams deal with?
Yes. So there's a lot of
what is that one big thing that you can say is, when you go to a new client, you can almost empirically say, they're going to have this issue, most probably.
It's as simple as just not knowing how to communicate well. It comes up again and again and again. It's bad if I say bad communication, I'm talking about lack of communication, not understanding how I communicate to someone else who's a different personality to where I am, or having a little bit of a gut feel as to maybe I should not address this issue right now, and maybe I should wait 10 minutes before I do it. But it fundamentally, majority of the things that we see in clients, and especially in coaching sessions and team developments, it boils down to people not communicating and making assumptions. And in that same sense, also being extremely sensitive, giving offense, taking offense, and all of that bundles for me under communication. So it's not the only thing, but it's such a big driver.
It's definitely
where teams struggle.
So Heléne, if I had to buy your book now, and I can see that there's the 12 chapters in it, yes. Which chapter should I be reading about this communication issue to help me solve the problems with my teams?
So, just hold on, because my one book dropped. Just give me a second. So, if I'm not mistaken, it is chapter 3 and chapter 4. Is so
understanding ego state and navigating tough conversations.
Navigating tough conversations. And then chapter 5, your attitude as a leader drives the way that you are being with people when you're communicating with them. So those 3 chapters for me is fundamental for communication. But then you go further down to, I think it's chapter 10, which is about listening, which is also part of communication if you think about it, because how you react and how you respond also depends on how you listen. And then the very last chapter, which is the thing that I absolutely love doing with clients, especially to create a culture of feedback, is the giving and receiving feedback. So I think even on our online platform, we've got the Ditch Mediocrity as a full online course, but we also have broken it into smaller short courses. And I think those 3 chapters that I mentioned now, chapter 3, 4, and 5, is actually a short course on actually just ditch mediocrity through communication. So that's how important it is. I was like, we need to make this in a short course so that more people can have access to it.
Yeah. But interesting. I mean, your chapter 3 is titled Understanding the Ego State. Now, let's go back to your MD of this sales team.
Yeah.
For him to have gotten to that state of realizing that maybe I've done my feedback incorrectly or my performance, you actually have to move past your own ego. The problem with ego is you can't see it. So you and I can talk about it, and somebody can listen to us and go, well, I don't have a problem with my ego. So how do you deal with that in teams? I guess that question could be from a leader perspective and somebody in the leader who has a team member, both ways. If a person that you deal with has an ego, you can't go and say to him, hey boss, go and read Helene's chapter 3, hint, hint, winch, winch, nudge, nudge. Say no more. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So there's many different ways that one can deal with it. In a workshop scenario, it actually is quite, I don't want to say easy for the facilitator, but you can guide people very, very clearly to get to a point where they realize how their ego states are impacting the way that they communicate and how it's impacting the responses that they get from people. So if it is, for example, a leader who's extremely judgmental and critical and almost a bit of a bulldozer, in these kind of leadership workshops, as you go through and as you do a lot of reflection questions and break away in deep and smaller groups, you start realizing for yourself, because you need to do reflection, but we also work in aspects where people give you feedback to say, this is how I experience you when I see you as a critical parent, or this is how I experience you when in times that you have been an adult. And the times that I've seen you in child, this is what it looked like. So it's very non-threatening ways of giving feedback so that the person can get a realization of when their ego is in the way. And then, so that's the one way of doing it inside a workshop, which is a very safe space. And that's why it's easy to do it in, easy as a relative term, but that's why it makes it easier to do it in that space because it's safe and there's an external facilitator. This book is actually there so that leaders can become their own team facilitators and create that safe space. But if you are the team member and you have an understanding of the ego state, then that is where you can actually put what you now know into practice. Because it's like, hold on, if I am going to go to my leader and I'm going to come from this helpless child or adaptive child process, like, I made a mistake on the report, I'm so very sorry, please forgive me, I will stay overtime, I will do whatever it takes. Naturally, we're sending an invitation that invites the parent ego state from our leader. And then we get the response like, seriously, you made a mistake again? And then we're surprised, but we invited that kind of response. So the team is kind of, how can you show up in your own adult way of being to admit the mistake? I always say, like in chapter 3, you'll see I say, play with the positives of all the different ego states. So it's like, how can I show up as an adult and use the positive sides of the different ego states to my advantage? So it's kind of like, apologize. Hey, you know what, Jacques, I must admit, I made a mistake. Here's what I think we should do. I know this has a big impact on the team. These are my solutions. Can I have your input? And I will make sure that this doesn't happen again. It's a very different approach to the previous one that I've just explained. And this invites the leader to then also come down into that adult space and not from the critical parent.
But how do I, as a team member, get to learn those approaches?
Practice. It takes a lot of practice. So I always say to some of our participants, once they've done the ego states process and the communication, I'm like, start practicing with people that you feel comfortable with. Start watching TV shows. So I used to do it with mine. And then my husband went on a short TA course and he came back and was like, you will never win a conversation again. But I'm serious. It really is about practicing. I have a little cheat sheet that I used to have next to my desktop back then. And every single conversation that I had that was slightly uncomfortable for me, I would first plan it out and say, this is what I'm going to say to start from my adult. This is what I'm going to say. And then I want to use my adaptive child and I want to use my critical parent and my nurturing parent. And then I plan my conversation and then I go and have the actual discussion with people. But that it really takes practice. And the thing is, we sometimes start chatting to someone and then we don't see any results. But all I want to say to you is continue practicing and continue crossing the transaction and coming from your adult, because it's about the other person learning that you have a new way of communicating. And very soon, the more you do it, they go, my normal ways of communicating with you doesn't work. So I now need to change my strategy to fit yours, which is then coming from the adult.
Come from that side. Yeah, and I guess you've just shared a valuable tool as well, and that's to write the stuff down. Because writing and preparing for those conversations, don't just have them. Make sure that you've actually written, your conversation never goes exactly how you've written it. At least there has been some thought process, and it just puts you 10 times more at ease. Now, Heléne, through all of this, I think one of the key points, and it actually takes us back to your chapter 1, and that is setting the stage, which is really about, how do you know where to go if you don't know where you're coming from or where you came from?
Yeah.
And, understanding people's personality profiles, as you mentioned, is extremely important. I guess, the team leader, if you're the leader of the team, you've got to say, do I understand the profile of the people that I'm working with in the team? And if you're a team member, you can ask that same question and also make the same suggestion to say, but, how do we get to know each other, in terms of behavioral preferences or thinking preferences?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so crucial. I think about even my own team. If I use the social styles language that we used in the book, I'm a driver. Then I've got one team, my one senior facilitator is expressive and the other one is an analyzer. But they both have very strong amiables in them, which is the complete opposite of what I am. And I have to understand that I can't, if I ask a question, don't expect an immediate response, because they both need to think things through first, especially from that amiable and analyzer energy. But if I don't understand that, then I get frustrated and I'm like, why aren't you quick enough? And what we now do is we use the language. I will say to them, for example, guys, my driver is getting frustrated. Or they will come to me and say, my analyzer is needing more information from you. And then I do a little bit of I roll my eyes. I'm like, seriously? But then at least I get to understand where it's coming from. So it's very crucial to understand that, because it's different ways of communicating. It's different likes. It's expressive and amiable. They make decisions based on feelings, where drivers and analyzers, they think about things. Already there can be like, it can clash. But if you get that and you embrace that from the other one, it adds it adds value and benefit for the whole team. Because, like, what are we missing from a feeling perspective, and what are we missing from a cognitive perspective? So it's really to start playing on each other in terms of, I want to be a little bit more empathetic. What would you have done in this scenario? And then ask for amiable. And I often get great advice.
Heléne, I just want to remind our audience that they can ask questions by typing into the chat box right at the bottom. And I see we've already got 2 questions there, Heléne, though, asking about, can we get the book on Kindle? It says that it was advertised on Kindle, but couldn't download the content. So maybe somebody can just be in contact with you or someone, or I mean, that's through Amazon, so it shouldn't be a problem, right?
What I will do is I'm just adding my email address in there quickly. And if you can drop me an email, because that is not supposed to happen. I know quite a few people who's bought it on Kindle, and also a few people who's bought it on Amazon UK. So please drop me an email, and I will deal directly with the company, the distributors for the online purchasing, and ask them what's going on, and then I'll get back to you. Absolutely. Would love for you to have one.
Thank you for that. Thank you for asking the questions. And if there's any more questions, please feel free to pop them in. We'll catch them as we go. But Heléne, to get back to the book, when I went through this chapter, there was one specific chapter that I thought, Shabbat, man, you must be getting that question a lot. And it's slap bang in the middle, which is how to motivate your team, chapter 7. I mean, you must be getting that question the most of any other question out there. How do I motivate my team?
I'm flying now to East Africa to do a keynote in Kenya, in Nairobi, and then in Dar es Salaam on that exact same topic. So it's very hot and trendy at the moment. Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine with with COVID and people working remotely. I mean, that's even more of a challenge for leaders and team leaders. So, I mean, what's your advice besides buying your book and reading the chapter?
So I think the best is to maybe give a very high level overview quickly around what is in that chapter, and hopefully some of you can take a practical tool away from that. So we speak about psychological hungers in the book, and there's 3 main psychological hungers that I speak about in the book. And it's a theory from Eric Berne from transactional analysis. And it says that when these hungers that we have are not being met, that is when we become disengaged. Sometimes even depression can set in. Inner conflict starts to rise, but there's definitely unease that comes in. Those 3 hungers are structure, so the need for structure, the need for acknowledgement, and the need for stimulus. So very quickly, if you think about the need for structure, it's, I want to understand what the agenda is for the meeting tomorrow. I like routine processes. I don't necessarily like surprises. I want to know what is happening. I don't like it when things change last minute. I think very often also, if you think back to when you were a student and you had to write lots of exams, you get nervous and you get overwhelmed from everything that needs to, don't know what they're going to ask. I don't know if I'm studying the right stuff. And all of a sudden your cupboard is perfectly packed because it's you channeling the need for structure. So now at least you have some structure in your cupboard, and then you go, okay, my need for structure is filled. Therefore, now I can go back to my stimulus and study and things like that. I'm using that as an analogy, as a little bit of a story.
Absolutely, it makes sense.
So that's the one thing, is the need for structure. The second one is the need for acknowledgement. It doesn't just mean a thank you and you're amazing, but it's the need to be included in a team, the need to work together with other people, the need to have a good working environment, the need to be seen for my tasks as well as for who I am as a human being. So that is kind of what the need for acknowledgement is. And you'll identify it by people often speak in stories. They speak about what they did for their family. They're often the ones that go, oh man, come on, isn't it time that we all go for a drink together? So that's kind of that need for acknowledgement. And then the need for stimulus as well. It's your typical person that go, what? We lost that client? Don't worry, I'll get him back. Watch me. So they make the impossible possible. And they really love a challenge. They don't like things to be the same all the time. So they are the ones that will say, can we not kind of change the agenda for a time, or give me more responsibility on board? So those are the 3 main ones. And my hunger profile is, I have a high need for stimulus and quite a low need for structure. But Jacques, I motivate you majority of the time from my own need. And if I motivate you through stimulus and you have a high need for structure, just there, I already can cause anxiety for you. So to give a very simple example, I think I use it in the book as well. If you are, or let's say I'm asking you to organize the company event, the company end of year event. If you have a high need for structure, I can say it to you in the sense, Jacques, I would love for you to organize the company event. You will have a budget. You will have a team that you can work with. You have access to me. We can set up meetings, etc., in order for you to do it. That speaks to all your structural requirements. If you have a high need for acknowledgement, I can say to you something along the lines of, the way that you dealt with that project and that client kind of launch that you've done was incredible. And I would love for you to take on the project of our year-end event, because I saw that you can do it. And I also think it will be amazing if you can make people feel special. Now, the need for acknowledgement has been filled. If the need for stimulus, I'll go something along the lines of, last year's amazing company event, I want you to do it and make it even better, and just leave it at that. But if I say to you, I want you to do it and make it even better, and you are hungry for structure, I'm going to freak you out. It's like, how am I supposed to do it? Like, I'll leave you with more questions than excitement. So it's just about understanding your team members' hunger profile and also understanding your own. And then people normally ask, how do I get to know their hunger profile? Ask them to draw it up.
That was my next question.
Like, explain it to them very quickly. Draw a little graph of how much of structure, how much of acknowledgement, how much of stimulus, and have a conversation around it. What does structure mean for you? What does acknowledgement mean for you? What does stimulus mean for you? And ask, and this is the practical part, is that you as the leader you're not the only one that's then creating the space for them to be motivated, but it's then to say, what can you do that's in your control to lessen the gap between where you are and what the company provides you? And that's where you can put the responsibility into the team member's hand to show up motivated, and you can create the space and the environment for people to be motivated inside of it. So that's kind of in a nutshell, the practical tool around
that. Have you got a story for us on this with a client, an interesting story about this hunger, and where you really saw it moving from completely disastrous to completely amazing?
Sure. Let me just quickly think. I think the first thing that one of the clients have realized is their hunger profile is one of acknowledgement. So what they constantly did is they every single time went to everyone, thanked everyone in all the team meetings. The team meetings were very long because it was always about, you did such a great job here, you were amazing over there. But what she never did is ran the meetings structurally in that space. So people never knew what was going to happen in the team meetings. And you can imagine if it's like a accounting firm where things need to happen, and naturally you've got quite a lot of people who are motivated by structure, not to stereotype, but there is a certain sense of requirement that is needed in terms of, I need to know what we are going to be discussed because this is the rest of my plan. And literally, small thing of bringing in those daily huddles and not moving away from the agenda made a massive difference in terms of just how she led the team. Another example is where a person she was I don't know how to say it in English, but she's a new mum. She had a newborn baby, okay? And she showed up at the office, but she had a very, very stressful job. And she realized, and she's motivated by stimulus, but she realized that she's so overwhelmed at home that all of a sudden, the work that she's doing in the office is too much for her. It's because her stimulus tank is already full because it's a newborn and she has no idea what she's doing with a newborn. and then she's like, okay, can we just for 3 months? It's not about it's not that you're incompetent. It is not about the fact that we think you can't do your job. But in that session, realizing that maybe just for the first 3 months that you are back from your maternity leave, just to take things easy and not necessarily having to do all the things that you normally do. And I think that the fact that people can then readjust their workflow to match that hunger need, even if it's just for a short period, so that the person can get back to normality and back into rhythm, makes a huge difference for people. It's huge. And then, of course, like in my own team, is I've joked about the personality styles, but they do it with their hungers too. So again, my structure is very low. So they'll go, Heléne, I need more information. It's the structure part of me that needs it in order to put this proposal together. And then I can't get angry or upset or frustrated because it's like, I get it. Thank you. Now I'm willing to.
And you've got to lead by example, Heléne.
It's so hard. Oh my goodness, it's so hard.
No,
yes.
But that's something that keeps integrity going, because doing that is integrity is sometimes hard. People think it's easy. But Heléne, we've got another question there, which is very interesting. At the surface, the book seems to cover a variety of actions to take as a leader. How much does a book focus on personal development for leaders? Great question. Thank you for asking that, Innocent. Heléne, would you like to take a stab at that?
I almost want to say it is 100% also focused on personal leadership. So I think the book, the way that I'm hoping the book comes across is that it's understanding of myself as a leader, and that's where the personal development pops in. It's understanding of leading individuals. Like for example, just what we did now, you can do that with a team, or you can do it with one individual that's really struggling, and then leading teams. So that's kind of like how I wrote it, and kind of keeping in mind, I need to develop as a leader. And even if I don't lead people, this book must still make an impact, because I can be a leader without a title. I can be an influencer in my peer group, and I can still use all of these tools and practical tools in order to show up in a different way, and to show up as a person that actually listens when someone speaks. Or I can use different coaching questions to support you when you go through a challenge. You do not need to be a leader in order to do that. So I think, Innocent, on that question, it's almost 100% also focused on personal development. It's, yes, the niche is if you lead someone, but it definitely is also, even whether you a leader in your community or a peer, if you're preparing for leadership even. So yeah, there's a loads of tools in there for personal development.
Excellent. So since I'm sure, go buy the book and give Heléne your feedback on that question. I'm sure she would love some feedback on a book. I mean, feedback is always great. And as a matter of fact, it is your chapter number 12.
Yes,
How to give amazing feedback. So, once you bought the book and you've gone through it, chapter 12 is for you. End it off and give Heléne some amazing feedback.
And amazing feedback
Heléne,
doesn't just mean positive, hey? It's also developmental.
Yes.
and kind of where can you go better, or where's the area that I didn't understand. I had someone who said to me, I find it extremely complicated. And that's absolutely fine, because she's an Audible person. Like, it's not on Audible yet, phase 2. But yeah, any feedback would be appreciated. I would love it.
And I guess it's not what you say, it's how you say it. That's what my grandmother always used to say. And I think in a corporate structure or in a business environment, it's even more important about, how do we carry that message, Heléne? I mean, let's be honest. How many people really enjoy feedback, especially if it's not great?
Sorry,
especially if it's not what you want to hear, and especially if you've got a big ego.
I missed your question there. You broke up a little bit on my side. Can you just repeat the question?
Yes, absolutely. Heléne, so I'm just saying that most people don't enjoy feedback, especially feedback that isn't positive of nature.
Yeah. And I think it's because I say we, it's certainly I, but we see feedback as an attack, and we see it as something that we need to then justify. But I, very, very early on in my industrial psychology part of my career, not necessarily the tourism part, I learned to look at feedback as an extraordinary gift that someone is giving you. Someone is actually taking the time out of their day to give you something so that you can get better. And not the worst part, but another thing to keep in mind is, it's freaking hard to give feedback to someone. Like, most people get very anxious when they have to give someone feedback. So when someone does give it to you, do know that they are also putting all their guts together to give you this message. And just for that, it should be like a thank you so much. I know this is hard, and you know what? I'm going to take it on. I might not agree with it, but I'm certainly going to process it and see what about that can I really understand, and what do I want to take on board. Because we have the right to also dismiss feedback, but my suggestion would also be, do it internally and really think if that feedback, if you should dismiss it, because there's a reason why someone gives you that feedback. But it's such a great gift if someone takes their time and their guts, put their guts together to say something to you that might be very hard to say. And it's not easy to hear it, but it's great if you can develop from it.
No, I mean, that's where you need the safe space that you've spoken about.
Absolutely.
Where one has to create it. Heléne, I want to wrap it up with a final subject before we say goodnight to everyone, and that's a subject that I think I've heard it a lot. Like, people ask a lot, but how do we build trust? Because trust is a big thing.
Yeah.
And it's a massive thing, you know, and I've heard so many times, you know, the conversation or the comment of, yeah, I'll never trust that person again. Or, yeah, you can't trust that one. How do you deal with comments like that? And how do you deal with, you know, how do leaders create and develop trust in their teams?
You are right. It's a big topic. And it's a topic that we spend a lot of time on as well with our clients. And I think if you like the tool that I use in the book is called the trust equation, and it's credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over self-interest. And I want to speak a little bit around that self-interest and the intimacy part. That self-interest part, if that is too high, people perceive you as devious. And what I mean by that is if you are in a relationship and it's really more about you and what you can get from it and what you want from it, then men and women both have that sixth sense, however you say it in English, you know, the gut feeling. It's not just women with the sixth sense. We all have it.
Yeah.
You can pick up when someone is not necessarily 100% authentic as to why they are engaging with you. And from my experience is when I see someone engaging with me and their self-orientation is too high, I immediately pull back, rightfully or wrongfully so, but that's where I pull back. And that's the first almost area of cracks that I see in trust and where I see it in teams. And it's often, I think David Meister, who created the trust equation, he speaks about self-obsession, where it's kind of like, I'm doing this, and there's always a strategy as to how you are going to get better, and instead of thinking, what's good for this relationship? And then the other part is the intimacy part that needs to be high. And I know people roll their eyes when I speak about intimacy, but it really is professional intimacy. And it's not just about sharing your deepest, darkest secret. It's also that whole thing of, even if in your team, is to go, I must admit, I'm challenged here. Like, I'm flawed. I need your input here because for the first time, or this has happened quite recently, I don't know what to do. And you don't have to go into victim mentality around it, but it's just acknowledging when something is difficult. Or Brené Brown speaks about lean in and don't tap out. And that part is also about the intimacy part. So I had a very difficult conversation with one of my team members recently. And she said to me, it's like, but we don't know what's going on for you. And I realized that I didn't share any part of my intimacy. Like, we had some very big illness in our family that was massive on me, and I never shared it. And they actually threw the equation in my face and said, you're great on the others, but you don't share what's going on. Okay. So that intimacy part is, and that's where psychological safety comes from. And it's, again, it's leaning in and even saying, I'm finding this conversation really hard, but I'm going to stick to it. And I want you to be here with me when we chat it through. The credibility and the reliability, that can be learned. I mean, everything can be learned. But I think those two are probably the most difficult for people to deal with, is the self-interest and then that intimacy part around sharing a little bit more. And again, not deepest, darkest secrets. It's about acknowledging and being authentic what's going on for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sharing your stuff, eh? You know, speaking your heart. People don't know how to do that.
And intimacy can even be as simple as, for example, I went to a client and they had a picture of their child fishing behind their desk. And when I spoke to them over the phone, he said, he said to me that he's going fishing. And then a while later, I spoke to him and said, hey, how was your fishing trip? Even that simple line of just checking in, that also forms part of intimacy. Like, it's a very shallow way, but it's kind of like, geez, like, this person has taken time to actually remember the conversation that we had. But the big thing is, if you want to develop trust, if you're the one that wants to create a trustworthy relationship with someone, you're going to have to take the first risk. You can't expect someone to share stuff with you if you don't share stuff with him or her and show them that you already feel that this is a safe space to discuss certain things. So you have to take that first risk.
Yeah, and I guess, Heléne, I mean, you're just reminding us, thank you very much, that relationships are full of risk. There's no guarantee in any of our relationships.
Exactly.
So, just being in a relationship with your spouse, your child, your team members, there's risk involved. And, for you to make that relationship work, to do your part of it, because it's going to have to be two ways. So for you to be a good leader, before you expect your team to be the best, you first have got to take that risk of trusting them. And you do by showing that you trust them with your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm reminded of that every day by my team.
Heléne, we really want to thank you for being part of this conversation. This has been absolutely fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, we will definitely be sending out this a recording of this conversation. And we'll also, in that email, Heléne, we'll share your contact details as we have it. So if you want to be in contact with Heléne, please just watch out for this email. We'll be sending that before the end of the week. You can be in contact with her. In the meantime, if they want to jump ahead, and if they drivers like you, Heléne, and want to get stuff done yesterday, they can just check you out on LinkedIn, connect with you maybe there, or on Facebook.
So majority of the time I'm on LinkedIn. Yes, it's the better platform. I was challenged and I did sign up for TikTok. I can't believe I did that. But in any case, stay on LinkedIn. Don't go.
We won't share that with our audience. Okay, we'll just keep that a little secret.
Yeah.
Heléne, so if they want to check in with you on LinkedIn, just remind me. It's just Heléne Smuts. I mean, that's all they have to.
Just to
type in and connect with you there. Otherwise, get a copy of the book, ladies and gentlemen. It's on Amazon. Otherwise, we'll also send a link where you can purchase that. So, Heléne, thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing knowledge.
Jacques, just a quick one. If you can't, I think it was Clive. You can also do Barnes and Nobles. I have found that they are actually quite amazing for delivery outside of the US. So that's Barnes and Nobles. They also do very well, and I've known they've delivered to the UK, to Australia, to Pakistan. So they're pretty sorted. If you want to try that as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing.
If all else, just contact Heléne. Heléne, a splendid evening further.
Thank you so much, Jacques, and thank you to everyone who listened. And I really hope that you get some practical tools and implement them for your own personal development and your teams. It will be amazing.
And this is the book. Go and get the book. Full of knowledge. Heléne, thank you very much. All the best.
Thanks, Jacques.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.